Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Lore Lords, episode 30. Tonight, we have an episode brought to you by the glorious mastermind of the internet, Pat Weston.
I am responsible for all of the internet. I made it. It's me. Patented me.
Yep.
You're welcome, everybody.
Yep. He made the internet. He created it from a box of scraps that he found from in a cave. It said Reaper Tech on it.
And I thought nothing of it, so I touched it. I saw some crazy visions, threw up a little bit, but then I decided to make the internet.
Yeah, which I'm glad you did. You know, I'm enjoying it heavily.
Some people called it a Prothean artifact, but I knew better. Anyway, but that's right. If you guys got those super subtle references, then you'll know we're talking about the world and universe of Mass Effect, which is one of my favorite games ever. I fucking love Mass Effect, particularly. I've never played Andromeda because it goes into a different place, and it's not quite like the same setup as regular Mass Effect. But, you know, the first three games, I love them. And even though the third game had a mediocre ending, I still loved the third game a lot. I still think the third game is phenomenal. I think the majority of the game, the vast majority of that game is great. So I don't have a lot of shade. It's literally like the last 5 to 10 minutes of the game. You're just kind of like, oh, okay. Everything else is great.
But that being said, Red is good. I appreciate Red, and I think if you really want to get into it, I think Red is a perfectly fine ending. I wish it wasn't done like a slideshow, but
right,
whatever.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, I know. It is really weird that it was just kind of like a lot of nice art instead of just like intense cutscenes, which is probably what it should have been.
After all of that, after all of that, okay,
yeah. But we'll get into what all that is. So in the Mass Effect universe, I guess I should say the galaxy. It takes place in our Milky Way galaxy. And it takes place about 150 years, probably, give or take, after, right now. So it gives us some space. You know, we have the potential of getting there, you know? We have the potential of getting to that area. Yeah, the Red ending is the best ending. Fight me. Just saying. Red ending, best ending. But anyway, so to get started, let's start off with us, the humans, the people of Earth. So, basically, for what our human history is, in basically, what is it, 40 years from now? Technically, we'll start building a base on the moon, which sounds great, doesn't it? But we'll actually get to, we're going to start building a base on the moon. I'm just going to pretend this is our actual future history.
Yeah, correct.
Instead of, even though you and I have talked about this before, actually. If there was a universe I could pick to live in, I'd absolutely pick to live in the Mass Effect universe.
Mass Effect could be a pretty solid choice.
Honestly, obviously the Reapers are fucking horrifying.
But if we were born where we're born now, who cares? You know, we're good.
Right. Yeah. It'd be great. But no, so in the Mass Effect universe, we start building our, bases and start to go towards the stars. I'd like to assume that we figured out a lot of shit on this planet Earth and started to look forward into the future. But, it's whatever, we're not going to talk about what's going on in real life. But, we got our shit together. So we started working, looking towards the stars and started building bases there and also on Mars. So we established Lowell City, which is a city in Massachusetts as well, the city of Lowell. Anyway, on Mars. And while we were digging around on Mars, we ended up finding some pretty interesting stuff. So we found some Prothean technology and data basically on Mars. And what is Protheans? Well, we find out that the Protheans are an ancient race that existed, over 50, 60, 70,000 years ago, a long, long time ago, and there doesn't seem to be any sign of them anywhere. And shortly thereafter, we also found a Mass Effect relay, which is basically we didn't really know at the time, I guess. We right outside of Pluto. So if you keep going outside, we find this technology, which is a Mass Effect relay outside of Pluto. And that's kind of like how we started getting into like the bigger, wider galaxy. Now we had our eyes kept on us from a different group of people, known as, well, actually a few groups of people, Citadel Council aliens, to be exact. So Solarians, Asari, and Turians. But then when we finally decided to join the greater universe, we ended up accidentally pissing off the Turians because we didn't know this. This is the beginning of something called the First Contact War, because this is the first alien race that we really came across, which is the Turians. And if you don't know who the Turians are, they're basically these crab-looking people. They kind of look like humanoid crab people. They're surprisingly sexy. Especially one in particular.
They're described as raptor-like tungsten-based life forms.
Yes. They're really tough, strong motherfuckers, but they are, they're very like war oriented. They're very powerful in terms of their military force, but they're not bad guys. Like they're not a bad race at all. They're just very sort of like weary of trusting others, but anyway, we find and come across the Turians by way of, because we tried to activate a dormant mass relay, and we didn't really know that under the council, which is like the Galactic Council, that's like an illegal thing to do. So the Turians immediately were kind of like, oh, fuck you, we're going to attack you because you're not supposed to do that. So then the First Contact War begins with humans versus the Turians. If you're watching the stream right now, a picture of a female Turian was just brought up on the screen because they are a biologically binary, similar to humans, where there are females and males. And they're all, again, incredibly badass. Their fleets are really cool. They have, I love their ship designs.
Yeah, they're a militaristic society. They're very rigid, and yes. They're very like their design is all very geometric. They're all very they're functional.
Yes, they are very functional. And in the game, you get to work alongside one of the coolest, baddest Turians ever, named Garrus Vakarian. We won't be getting too much into characters on this. I'll bring up characters, obviously, but we're not going to talk about too much of the characters until a little bit later, just because this is more or less trying to we're going to try to explain the world around Mass Effect more than the story itself, because the game, honestly, is a very character-based game. Like, in all Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, you basically just get to know a lot of really, really cool aliens and other humans too throughout the Mass Effect universe and help them work together and to taking down the Reapers. So This is basically just like, what we're going to talk about is the universe that sort of surrounds this really great character-driven story.
Yeah, and if you haven't played Mass Effect, it's a trilogy game. It's available now in a one package called the Remastered Edition. Can't recommend it enough. So or Legendary Edition. Yeah, there you go. Play through it yourself, because that's. I'm glad we're not going over like the spoiler plot parts. So just because it's something you need to experience yourself.
And it's really hard to kind of do a narrative from beginning to end talk, because choice is very important. Everybody knows this about Mass Effect because the game's been out for over 12 years now. But choices are important. You can make different decisions, and all of those decisions can drastically affect the outcomes of the next games and so on and so forth, which is awesome. And I think that is fucking so cool. And the fact that they did it so well, with, again, the exception of the endings, which are, again, just okay. And, they really could have put a little bit more effort into it, but we're not talking about the plot stuff. But anyway, so this is, again, this all predates the game, but we're talking about the First Contact War between the Turians and the humans. This all actually predates the game itself. So there is a character that we know and love that took place in the First Contact War, which is Captain Anderson, or Commander or Admiral. He goes through many different names, actually, in different titles, because Anderson is the shit, voiced by Keith David. Oh, what a smooth man. What a smooth voice. Oh, God, I love Keith David. But anyway, so Captain Anderson takes part in the first contact war against the Turians. And honestly, the Turians kind of kick a lot of human ass, to be honest. They're, because again, they're a very powerful militaristic society, and they've existed into the galactic system a lot longer than humans have. So when humans kind of start pushing their luck with this dormant Mass Effect relay, the Turians start spanking us a bit. But the other races, such as the Asari and Solarians, which are the other two consul species, are very much like, yo, slow your roll. Humans can help us out. They got a lot of stuff. They got a lot of integrity, and they're kind of cool themselves. So let's get into the council races a little bit. So yeah, they have the Asari and the Solarians and the Turians. Those are like the three main ones. The Asari are a monogendered species, basically all females. Or at least they have the female aesthetic. They do their biology is basically that similar to a human female, honestly, except their skin is soft like human skin. However, it has kind of a scaly texture to it, like kind of lizard-like, but it doesn't it's like halfway between lizard and human, because it is soft.
Yeah,
but
I
it's
imagine
not like
it very similar to when you pet like a really soft lizard or snake, like a pet version of a snake. That's like, sometimes like really like soft feeling, kind of like that.
Yeah.
With the really
but they're
fine
not like
scales.
cold-blooded. Yeah, but they're not like cold-blooded. They're still warm-blooded. So it's like, so they still have that. But anyway, and they're honestly they're a race that can live up to like 1,000 years or even more than that. They can live a very, very long time. Whereas Turians can live a couple hundred years as well. Actually talking about the Turian lifespan. And Solarians, however, only live like max 60 years.
I think it's 40.
Yeah, well, most of them only live till around 40, but I imagine a good healthy one can maybe make it to 60, but they don't live very long. But however, Solarians, because of their short lifespan, have incredible IQs. But anyway, we'll get back to Solarians in a sec. We're talking about the Asari. So the Asari are monogendered species. They're basically female in every way. Like, they have boobies and vajayjay. But the way they reproduce, however, is very interesting. And where they can actually reproduce with any other species out there. But they don't, because they don't necessarily need to have any physical contact in order to reproduce. Instead, what they do is they kind of connect with you mentally, which is really fucking cool. So they can, and during that, like, I think it's called what, the melding process? Yeah, it says during the melding, they consciously attune their nervous system to their partners, and they do receive like genetic code from their partners. So there is going to be like the babies that come out of their reproductive system. They don't just look like a direct copy of their mother. They do look a little different because they take on some genetic stuff from their partner, but they can do the deed with anybody. So an Asari can be with a Turian the same way it can be with a Krogan, the same way it could be with a Solarian. It does not matter. And in the game, there is a romantic option of an Asari, which I always go for because I simp super hard for the Asari Liara Tassoni. She's got one of the best story arcs in the entirety of Mass Effect. I love her story arc so much. I won't spoil it too much for those who are playing it right now. But in the first game, I'll just say this. She starts off as kind of just like a nerdy scientist Asari who's just trying to research, old Prothean artifacts. She's basically an archaeologist. But boy, howdy does her story change. And in a really badass way. And she's mega hot. We love the blue booba here. Personally, big fan of the Asari.
Yeah, we're big blue babes.
I wish the Asari were real.
Big
blue babe. Oh,
yeah.
Big blue babe. Big fan. Love them. Wish the Asari were real. God damn it. Anyway, but yeah, they live for like 1,000 years. They're very intelligent. They're very empathetic creatures as well. And they do actually, because of their way that they reproduce and everything, they do have a sort of what word am I looking for?
They have a very sexual theme about them.
Yeah, they do, which is not necessarily true. Like, they're not,
So they're because it's a race of all women, they're very objectified, but at the same time, a lot of them go into it knowing that and make tons of money off of it, or get tons of power or control off of it.
It is very, very true because they're a beautiful species. They look really cool. They have a really dope aesthetic to them, and they're all.
They also have mind fuck powers that can pretty much, if someone tries to take advantage of them, they can't.
Yeah, yeah, basically. They're naturally attuned to a power in this universe called biotic. So they are incredibly powerful biotics, and biotics is kind of like the Force, telekinesis. It picks up stuff. You can throw things with your mind. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with it. One of my personal favorite abilities, I use it a lot, and in the last game in Mass Effect 2 that I just went through, his biotic charge, which basically slows down time and allows you to rush your opponent at high speeds and knock them over, and do pretty good damage to them as well. Big fan of biotics. I love playing as biotics, with biotics in Mass Effect. It's so much fun. And that's kind of like their abilities. And there's also, which I love too, is there's kind of like a version of the Asari, which are kind of evil, actually. And they're referred to as the Ardak Yakshi, and which stands for Demon of the Night Winds, which is really cool. And it's actually a genetic disorder. So it's actually really sad to think about the Ardak Yakshi, because they don't really have a choice in how they are. So the Ardak Yakshi is like, they don't have the ability to conventionally mate or meld the nervous systems when mating. So instead, they ended up kind of destroying their partner's nervous system. So while they're trying to make sweet nervous system love with their partner, they end up just messing them up and killing them, paralyzing them, and it's pretty fucked up.
It's a bad time
and
for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's not great. So, and well, unless you're the Ardak Yakshi, because they kind of have to learn not to care. So honestly, oftentimes Ardak Yakshi are seen as evil demons. So they are oftentimes exterminated by Asari commandos, which are an elite group of Asari warriors, basically. And there are also Justicars, which is actually a character you meet in Mass Effect 2. Her name is Samara. She's an Asari as well. She is the Justicar Samara. Justicars are oftentimes Asari who are reaching their later stages in their life. So like post 700 years old, basically like in the 700, 800 years old, you can become a Justicar, which is a very sort of code-based warrior, very powerful. They've been studying biotic powers for, centuries, so they're insanely powerful, and their job is to basically keep after the Asari, look after them. They look after the galaxy as a whole, but they really focus on like Asari specifically, helping them out. And again, they follow a very strict code where like one of the rules of it, and you learn this in the game, is that they can't be held in prison. Like they're not like they're sort of like specters, which we'll get into what a specter is in a minute, but like in the case that they're kind of above the law. So if you like arrest, quote unquote, a Justicar, they have every right to just fucking kill you. And they won't like necessarily. They'll I think they're allowed, their code allows them to go under your jurisdiction for like 24 hours. So they can just kind of like, okay, for 24 hours, I'll sit in a cell, but if you don't let me out in 24 hours, I'm going to level your entire prison. It's like, okay. So that, they do follow their own kind of code, but it's typically they're kind of like a good example, a good, comparison would be like a paladin in D&D. Like they follow a very strict code. They have to follow it to the T, or else they're
a good comparison is like a Jedi Master.
Sure, a Jedi Master. I guess that's another one too.
Because they're kind of like above the law, and they just kind of go around the galaxy doing what they need to do.
Yeah, that's true. That's another good one too. And they're really badass. I like Justicars a lot. They're really cool. But anyway, so that's kind of about the Asari. Again, they live 1,000 years. They can mate with anybody. They're monogendered, basically. And they do have, though, their own curse of the Ardak. Excuse me, I just burped. The Ardak Yakshi. So it's really cool.
You can also get one of those in the games, but that's not what we're talking about now.
Yeah, you can get one of those too. And then the third of the council races is the Solarians. The Solarians are again, they're warm-blooded amphibian-like creatures, hyperactive metabolisms. They only live around, like the age of 40 years old. Again, they're incredibly intelligent, though, like hyper-intelligent. They have to be because they don't live very long. So they're oftentimes, a lot of Solarians are scientists. They're closer to that. And they do have some powerful warriors. There are Solarian commando groups and stuff like that. You actually work with one in Mass Effect 1. In the first Mass Effect game, you work alongside them.
And throughout
with a man named... Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, throughout the whole series, they constantly mention the Solarian, like, special forces. Like, they always talk about them, like, they're the ones who go do the wet works jobs.
Yeah. And they're very good at, like, getting in and getting out, no problems, you know? They're very like Black Ops types because again, in a straight up fight, basically any other race could beat a Solarian. They're not like the ones you'd want to have like, or in our case, they are the people we'd want to have a one-on-one fight with. However, they are one of the ones who developed something called the genophage to affect a race called the Krogan, which we will get into too, during something called the Rachni Wars. So to go into the Solarians a little bit to talk about the Rachni Wars. So there's a species known as the Rachni. They're very like bug insect type creatures. They speak to each other telepathically, and they were basically traversing the galaxy and taking over, very similar to kind of like the Flood in Halo, where like they're just like spreading themselves, eating everybody and killing everybody. However, the Rachni themselves, unlike the Flood, aren't inherently evil. They just saw the destruction and the wars that were caused by the other races in the galaxy, and they were like, well, we're gonna kill them because they're a threat to us. However, they ended up losing because the Solarians, Turians, and Asari weaponized a race called the Krogan in order to take them out. And the Krogan are basically the berserks of this galaxy. They're these massive, like turtle-like creatures. They're huge. They're vicious. They're mean. They have a very sort of like what's the best way to describe? They're the very like again they're strength owns all.
Krogans are like they're kind of like they're the equivalent of like the Klingons from Star Trek, the orcs from fantasy. They're the big monstery guys that are just like we're based on strength, but we do have like an honor code system kind of thing like that.
Yeah, they're not like, again, not a race that is inherently bad at all. However, they will be the first race to jump to violence.
Yeah, the closest comparison, I know you haven't seen Star Trek, but the closest comparison is the Klingons. They're very, very, very similar.
Right. You end up working with a couple of them in Mass Effect. You work with one named Rex, not Rex, which is one of my favorite characters. Shepard. Big old Shepard.
Shepard.
I love Rex. Rex is a great example because Rex wants nothing more. At first, Rex wants nothing more than to be a lone wolf kind of exploring the galaxy. But then as time progresses, he's like, I'm going to help out my people. And it's really nice. And he wants to then find a cure for the genophage because the genophage was created to then slow the birth rate of Krogans because after the Rachni Wars, the Krogans were celebrating. And they were kind of... And while they celebrate, as more barbaric type people would do, they bang a lot of banging. So they were having tons of kids. So Krogans were spreading like crazy. And then the Krogan Rebellion started. So, and when the Krogan Rebellion started, there was a lot of death on the other side. Like Krogans are incredibly powerful. Like they know how to use weapons. They know how to hand-to-hand combat fight. They're also biotics as well. They can use biotic powers. So basically, they're insanely intimidating and hard to take down. So the Turians worked together with the Solarians to develop the genophage, which basically allowed only 1 in 50 or 1 in something like that?
If even. I think it was like 1 in hundreds, I think.
Yeah. Like Krogan to be born... very, very infrequently are Krogans born, and that sent the Krogan back quite a long time on their planet Tuchanka, which basically collapsed. Their home planet of Tuchanka during this time completely collapsed, because again, they were also at war with the Turians, so the Turians basically bombed the shit out of their home planet and leveled it. And when you go there in Mass Effect 2, you see the devastation and what happened, because there's not a lot of Krogan clans left. And they're all basically fighting amongst each other for control over females. Although the females in Krogan society are actually very aware of how important they are, which is very interesting. You'd think that it's fighting over fertile females would be a big deal, and that is a big deal. But the women are oftentimes incredibly no, I need to bang and make kids. We need to save our species. They're very aware of their duty as a society, in their society, which is very kind of sad is that like it's really depressing. So,
Yeah.
but that is what it is. So they understand their duty very well. And in the story itself, like there's also talks of like clans sharing females just because they need to like help grow themselves. And every Krogan, despite hating each other and hating each other's like clan stuff, they want to help each other out because all of them understand that repopulating their own species is way more important than the fight amongst each other, which I think is very interesting. And again, they do have that honor code. So that's a little bit about the Krogans.
Yeah, it's also important to note, which was just brought up in chat, is that they did cause their own nuclear apocalypse.
Yeah, that's true.
The Krogans were kind of uplifted, which is a similar situation to the Klingons again. They kind of like got saved by the galaxy because they caused their own nuclear apocalypse, and the galaxy kind of intervening gave them stuff they weren't ready for, and it kind of set them up to be the dangerous thing that they needed to control.
Right. So, they maybe we shouldn't have given them, I'd say it was the Solarians, Turians, and Asari. They shouldn't maybe not have given them as much resources as they did, but they did.
Yeah, you always got to learn that in every sci-fi, learn that the hard way sometime.
Yeah, it's true. But now we talked about the Krogan, let's get into some other non-council species. So the Krogan are the first one we're talking about in the non-councils, but there are so many non-council species. There are the Batarians, the Drell, the Elcor, the Geth, the Hanar, the Keepers, the Praetorians, the Quarians, the Reapers, I guess, and the Vorcha, the Volus. There are so many. Oh, I guess in the Collectors too. You can count them, I guess. There are tons and tons of different ones. And the humans actually had a spat with the Batarians. So there was a big old battle between the Batarians and this is actually where Commander Shepard comes from, because Commander Shepard fought in like the Batarian Wars, which I believe it was called what was the war exactly called? I don't remember what it was.
Something about,
I don't know if they had.
So I know the planet was Torfan. I don't remember the name of the war.
Yeah, but there was this is actually where you find Commander Shepard was. Commander Shepard was part of the Skillian Blitz, and that was like a big battle between the Batarians and the humans that kind of ended the war. So it was an attack on the human capital of Elysium. So a lot of Batarians are pirates and slave traders, so they're not accepted in the council because the council is humanistic or humanists. They don't want people to sell trade. Like they don't want people to sell people. The slavery is not good, and obviously pirating is not good. And honestly, one of the kind of cool facts about Batarians is they oftentimes weaponize asteroids. So one of their big ways of taking down their enemies is they'll just crash asteroids into your planets and just be like, okay, fuck you, bye.
Yeah. Again, for Star Trek fans, which I'm pretty sure the Batarians are based off of, they're based off of the race the Cardassians from Star Trek. They're like they're like a neutral party. Like they're not part of the council. They're not part of the Citadel. They're not part of this like galactic community. They exist outside the galactic community called the Batarian hegemony, and they're powerful enough to survive and live on their own. But they're definitely like a messed up like despot driven oligarchy, like autocrat kind of society that focuses on kind of like selling drugs and people through the galaxy.
They're like Russia. But anyway, they also found a lot of the they're found in the terminus systems too. Oftentimes, like they work for a lot of mercenary groups, like the Blue Suns and the Blood Pack. Or well, the Blood Pack is mostly Krogan and Vorcha, but they work for like Blue Suns and Eclipse. They're often found there because that's how they make a lot of their money. So that's the Batarians. They're really cool. The Drell are fucking badass. You work with one of the sexiest Drell of all time named Thane. You don't actually see a lot of Drell, because they're kind of.
You see three in the entire series.
Yeah, something like that. Because I know, there's Thane, his son Krios, and then there's a friend of Liara named.
Yeah.
Oh, what's his name? And that's like the Shadow Broker DLC.
Yeah, the Shadow Broker DLC. She's got a Drell friend. Never see a female. We know they exist.
Yep.
We never see them.
It's true. There are according to their own page here, there are about 11 billion Drell remaining. So in context to a wide galactic universe, it's actually not that many.
No,
you know,
because I think they lost their planet.
Yeah, they did. So they are incredibly powerful biotics as well. However, they kind of they're susceptible to diseases pretty easily, similar to the Quarians. We'll get into the Quarians; they're even more susceptible to diseases. But so like the one you meet and works with you, Fane, who is a master assassin, is dying. Basically, he has something called Keprel syndrome, and he's dying, which is really sad. Which basically means anywhere that is like moist, like anywhere that has a lot of humidity and moisture, will literally like slowly deteriorate his lungs, which is not great.
Yeah. Which just to be clear, if you're listening to this and not looking at pictures of Drell, they are lizard people, and they look actually very, very like realistic lizard people, I would say. Like if you were to make a reptilian, they're a pretty good case of what they might look like, and they have very dry skin. They live on very arid worlds. Yeah,
exactly, and they actually have a close relation to the Hanar. Actually, so because the Hanar helped them out, because they allowed the Drell to go to their homeworld after theirs was no longer hospitable to them to live on. So that's kind of a neat thing. The Hanar are cool. The Hanar are basically giant octopuses. Well, not octopus. Sorry, jellyfish. They're kind of like jellyfish-like creatures. They're very kind of tall and they're morbous and they speak with you telepathically. They're pretty cool. I don't have much to say about them. They always refer to themselves as this one.
They worship the race known as Protheans, which we mentioned at the beginning, which are like the previous empire of the galaxy.
Yep. Yeah, we'll definitely get into the Protheans more because that's really cool.
Yeah, the Hanar worship them and call them enkindlers.
That's right. I forgot about their enkindlers.
Yeah.
Yes, the way they say it. But they're very, and they're not wrong to worship these guys because the Protheans are pretty dope and pretty powerful. And we'll get into them a little bit too, because talking about, we'll talk about the big Reaper stuff, which will definitely involve the Protheans. Anyway, kind of going back to the Drell a little bit. The Drell are actually very, they can be a very religious species as well. They oftentimes worship their patron deity of, I forget the name. What is the name again? I must have said Kirahi, and I was like, no, that's the guy in the Solarians. They are, what's the name? He's driving me crazy right now. I'm like looking it up right now. But they worship Kala, what is it? Kala here?
I don't think I ever even remember. That's not something I even thought about.
Driving me crazy right now. Oh, here, deeply religious. Yeah, most Drell are deeply religious, believing that they have souls separated from their bodies. They see death as a departure from the body, which is very similar to like Buddhism and Taoism and stuff like that. Kalahira, that's what it is. Kalahira. That's kind of like the goddess of the afterlife. Kalahira, and oftentimes when Thane kills somebody in Mass Effect, he'll say like, "Go to Kalahira" or "Kalahira take you" or something like that. So like. He believes them to take them to the afterlife. So that, because again, they believe that their souls and their bodies are connected for only a time, and after death they part. But yeah, so continuing on, I love these guys, these big dumb elephant creatures. They're known as the Elcor. They're not dumb. I just think they're so silly. I love the Elcor for one reason and one reason alone. They cannot express emotion at all. So anytime that they want to articulate that they're feeling a way, they tell you. Like they'll just say like, they'll be like amused, thank you, and come again, or like angry. Those guys are stomping on my land. Like I fucking love Elcor, dude. They oftentimes are seen on the Citadel. They're shopkeepers. They're really kind of friendly. There is someone just brought it up in the chat. If you're following along there is actually a hilarious bit throughout the franchise that there is a famous Elcor who writes plays and does adaptations of Shakespeare, which is fucking hilarious. So imagine something that can literally not express emotion doing Shakespeare. They're from the world Dakuna, which I love that. I love the name of that place. And again, they're these
Hakuna
really
Matata.
slow moving. Yeah, they're very slow moving. They're big, big bulking creatures. They're kind of they're a little bit more conservative by nature. You know, they just kind of want to make sure that everything's going okay on their planet, and they just kind of want to like they're just kind of doing their own thing. You know, they're a little, again, because of their slow movement. They're not exactly the quickest species, which is why they won't be on the council at all. But however, they work alongside the council. They do have their own fleet. You can actually utilize the Elcor fleet in Mass Effect 3. So that's kind of cool too. Let's talk about the Quarians and the Geth, because this is one of the cooler, like, sort of situations. So the Quarians are a race of people who grew up on, what was their planet called again? It's killing me right now. Their main planet is called, hold on, let me find that again. I have so many tabs up right now for Mass Effect because there's so many goddamn tabs. When their homeworld was conquered, what is their homeworld called? It's driving me, I know the name, it's on the tip of my tongue, and for the life of me I can't figure it the fuck out. Rannoch, right, okay, Rannoch, yeah, here it is. So they were on the homeworld of Rannoch, and they're a very technologically savvy species. A lot of them are engineers, which is a type of class you can be in Mass Effect as well, which means they can kind of control technology and utilize their intelligence to, like, create drones and whatever. And eventually, they wanted to create a system of AI to help them with labor and to get them to do a lot of, like, the harder work for them, which in theory is a good idea. So that way the Quarians wouldn't ever get hurt themselves. So they created the Geth, and the Geth are a synthetic, basically, species that is a hive mind. So they share data amongst one another. That again was created to just do, like, intensive labor stuff and ship functions and otherwise very dangerous work for the Quarians, because the Quarians themselves are not exactly a big bulky species. They're very humanoid-like. However, they cannot go to a lot of other planets because of their biology. So if they go to, like, if a Quarian without their suit on, like their biohazard suit on, basically went to, like, Earth, they would get sick almost immediately and die because there's so many different diseases.
Isn't that only a result though of the Geth? I think the Geth were just made. The Geth were just made as labor, and then because the Quarians were forced away, they became weak.
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it. They were. That is true. Like when they became the migrant fleet, so basically they just exist on a bunch of ships floating around. They did become way more sick, but they were always sort of susceptible to these types of things. Like it's not. They always had this to them. But yes, you're not wrong. When the Geth took over Rannoch, they ended up becoming way more susceptible to sicknesses and stuff like that. But again, very genius, very intelligent species. You end up meeting one and hanging out with one in all three games, actually. Tali Zora, which is she's like one of the best characters. She has got a great story herself. She's got it's really great. And they live on a place called the Migrant Fleet, or the Flotilla is what they also refer to it as. But anyway, so getting back to the Geth and Quarians battling. So eventually the Geth ended up developing an AI that was so intelligent that they started to rebel against the Quarians. So to fight for survival, because the Quarians saw what was going on and they got kind of nervous amongst themselves and they're like, oh, we have to take down these Geth. So then the Quarians started going to war with the Geth, but the Geth were just trying to survive. So they fought back. But because the Geth were basically built for intensive labor and abuse, they won. And so they ended up taking over Rannoch and expelling the Quarians from their own homeworld to become the Migrant Fleet. And they have like their own sort of religious explorations. They have something called the Pilgrimage, which is actually where you meet Tali, because most Quarians are said once they come of age. They're supposed to sort of leave the flotilla, go on their pilgrimage, which could be anything. You could go anywhere and do anything to basically try to learn more about the galaxy as a whole, to bring back more technology, bring back more information to the greater flotilla. So the idea is that you go out, learn more stuff, get more stuff, and bring it all back to the folks at home. And so that's kind of the idea. Whereas, and as the Geth end up sort of splintering themselves. So as time goes on, this is actually sort of a plot point in Mass Effect 2, but it's not really a major spoiler. The Geth are one of the very first, if not actually the first, villain that you major faction that you end up fighting in Mass Effect, because they are under the impression of the Reapers, which we'll get into the Reapers. That'll be a whole section of itself. They get into worshiping the Reapers as gods, basically, because again, the Geth themselves are synthetic creatures. They are mostly technology, but there is some a little bit of organic nature to them, the same way that the Reapers are. So they end up sort of worshiping them as gods. And the theory is that some of it's due to indoctrination, but as a character named Legion will tell you that some of these Geth chose to worship the Reapers, not through indoctrination, but through the idea that they are a species that will help ascend the Geth, which isn't obviously necessarily true, because as we know, the Reapers will simply harvest the Geth, because that's what the Reapers do. So that's kind of and Legion himself has sort of or itself, I should say, has sort of a little bit of a challenge in his own head of being well, maybe this freedom of choice isn't that good of an idea, because clearly some of the Geth want to worship these beings that want to annihilate everybody, whereas some Geth don't. There are plenty of Geth, the ones that are actually on Rannoch, the Quarian homeworld, that don't actually want to go to war. They simply want to progress their species the same way any species would. So there are splinter factions amongst the Geth themselves. So even though the Geth are a hive mind and can share information, they don't necessarily all agree from unit to unit or from place to place. So the Geth are more complicated than you'd think, despite being a hive mind, which I love. I think that's really interesting. It gives a lot more nuance to the idea, and I think it's really important. Moving on from them, let's actually get it. Well, we can talk about the Vorcha and the Volus real quick as well. Okay. So these are other two species that live there. The Vorcha are these brutal, sort of barbaric creatures. They're kind of like mammal reptile hybrids, kind of. If you're watching the stream, they're in the bottom left corner. They're very hairy yet kind of gooey, and they have sharp teeth, and they're very vicious. Most of the time, they just work as mercenaries. They don't really have a lot of. They're not very intelligent, so they're not very they're not very much welcomed in the council space. So they're oftentimes in the terminus systems, which is I guess if you want to use north, south, east, and west, the terminus systems are sort of like the northern section of the galaxy, and
it's kind of like the outer rim
are.
In Star Wars. It's like the lawless area.
Yeah, the terminus system's like the lawless area, but instead of being an outer rim, it's more just like the northern section of the galaxy, whereas like council space is like the southern section of the galaxy. So if you're going to break that down, sections of the terminus system involve places like Omega, run by Arya T'Loak and Asari, Ilium, which seems really classy and beautiful, but is really kind of owned by the black market and the shadow broker. Those are some notable places. And also Rannoch, actually, the Quarian homeworld is technically on the outer rim of the terminus systems. But it's not really it's not really close to any of the big bads or anything like that. So those are some notable areas in the terminus systems for those who play in the games. And the Volus are probably one of the goofiest fucking species.
They're just little buddies.
In the whole... They're little guys. They're just little buddies. They're a merchant species. They oftentimes and banking clans. They are very very money libertarian types. They love money. They love selling stuff. They're big fans of that. They oftentimes work with the Citadel. They're oftentimes helpful. They're not bad necessarily. However, they love money. So if you offer them enough money, they'll basically do whatever they want. They have to wear these suits that cause them to breathe similar to Darth Vader. Apparently, according to this, they have suits that support an ammonia-based biochemistry. So they need ammonia to survive, which is pretty funny. There's a little side thing that I love in these games, and I know you know what I'm talking about. There's one character that you meet in Mass Effect 2 who ends up taking a drug that makes their biotic powers incredibly strong, because they have biotics, but they're not very powerful. Again, they're not physical. They do have a fleet that has, like a military and all that, but they're not like, like if the Volus versus the Turians would cut through them like paper. But they do have a military. But but at one point in the game, a Volus comes across a biotic drug that enhances his powers, and he's convinced that he becomes a biotic god, because it also kind of affects your brain a little bit. Doesn't make you the most intelligent thing in the world.
Spoiler: he's not.
He's not a biotic god. He's just, if anything, he just becomes mildly okay at biotics.
Yes.
And you can either send him in to die, or you can knock him out to save him. I always knock him out to save him, because it's way funnier that way. Because he wakes up and kind of just goes, "Oh, I'm gonna go take a nap."
I think the Volus are also subterranean, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's mentioned that they live underground. Which is one of the reasons for their suits is because it's a high pressure suit due to living in closer to their planet's core.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Because they're mole people.
It also explains why they're short. Yeah. Basically, they're basically the mole people of this. They're very short and stubby. They don't. None of them are more than like 3 feet tall.
Yeah. Like if their suit ruptures, they just basically. I think it said that they kind of like explode, because their body can't exist in our pressure levels that everyone else does. So they have to stay in their suits all the time.
Poor little Volus. Yeah. I love Volus. They're the goofiest.
They're great. They're kind of shitty. A lot of them are like pieces of shit. Like they're always trying to rip you off. They're always trying. They're like scummy merchants. Like they're not. They usually, if you go to
they're money grubbers.
It's like going to Volus. Going to a Volus merchant is like going to Watto on Tatooine in Star Wars. Like they're always trying to to get something out of you. They're not fair usually.
Right. But all you have to do is like threaten them with violence.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They'll be like, "Oh, never mind. Sorry, I'll help you out."
Almost every time.
Know one pin, the one pinprick to their suit and they're fucked. So they know better. I don't think throughout the entire franchise you actually fight a Volus.
In Mass Effect 3 multiplayer you can play as a Volus, and that is the only time in the entire franchise you see Volus fight.
I really wish they'd do a DLC for Legendary Edition and bring
100%. Oh my gosh.
Because I loved the multiplayer. It was, especially when you had friends to play it with. It was so much fucking fun.
It was a lot of fun.
It was basically just like for those who don't know what it was basically just like
it was wave defense.
What's it? Wave defense. Yeah. Like in Halo. What's that called in Halo?
I don't know.
I forget what.
But I don't know. I didn't know that was in Halo. Yeah. But it's a game where you're just defending points against waves of enemy coming in, and you have a timer. It ends. Next wave. Waves get stronger. And there was such a array of characters you could pick. You could be basically any race, even a collector. Right. You could be a Geth. You could be Batarian, Volus, everything. Basically everything except for Hanar and Elcor were playable.
Yeah, and they probably tried to make an Elcor.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Even a Hanar, wouldn't be surprised if they put one in. You could play as Max Blasto.
Well... Yeah, I was just about to talk about Blasto, the fucking movie star Blasto.
Yeah, there's a Hanar, the jellyfish people, who is a James Bond style movie star, and you constantly will see posters and ads for them in their in the game. Like you'll hear ads and see stuff about the movies.
Yeah, in Mass Effect 3, you can actually take part in Blasto's scenes. You can actually be in a scene with Blasto. It's fucking funny. It's so funny. But yeah, anyway. So that's kind of like those secondary races. We didn't really talk too much about the Keepers. The Keepers are basically just a race that we don't know much about, because all they do is take care of the Citadel. Their entire job and purpose of being is to make sure the Citadel stays active and running. And that's it. Well, actually, this is a good pivot. What is the Citadel? Well, the Citadel is an ancient starbase that it is assumed was created by the Protheans, which we find out later it is not. But we assume that it was created by the Protheans. That is kind of like the central hub for all of like the council races. It is, I think it is one of, and you and I have talked about this in stream before, one of the coolest fucking things ever created in sci-fi. I love the Citadel. It is beautiful. It is awesome. The way it looks, the aesthetics of it, like what it is actually used for is really, really cool. It is awesome. It is kind of in and of itself, though, a mass relay, because it can be used to teleport and transport people to and from it. But again, that's kind of a secret thing. Shush. We don't really know too much about it. It is a 5-pronged sort of starbase that is kind of like, if you think about like a Halo ring, if you're familiar with Halo, like on the Halo ring itself, it actually has like, it's habitable because it's so big. It has its own gravitational pull. It's very similar to that, where it's such a big thing that you can build on it and and it's totally fine. So basically the council races, the Turians, Asarians, and Solarians built a giant society where all races can come and participate in this sort of great experiment, basically. It's very similar to America. But it is beautiful. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's the capital of space.
It's the capital of space, exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of in the middle. Again, it's kind of like where everyone gathers. It's where the business and politics are done.
Right. Yeah. It is, and also a lot of like the mass relays. Sort of like that. If you go through mass relays, oftentimes you'll end up at the Citadel. Like it's very common for the Citadels to kind of like the mass relays to get you there. Even though mass relays themselves are really, really cool and interesting in and of themselves, because they are actually like, they're kind of like it's like a hyperspace system but they don't, like, you can't just go from one Mass Effect relay to any other Mass Effect relay. There's kind of like a chain, so you kind of jump from relay to relay. But there are, I think, like, how many are there throughout the galaxy? There's like hundreds of them, probably.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
It's a very huge network, and it's mapped out. I think new ones are still discovered. They kind of mention. So, like, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, because that's actually like a big. That was when we talked about it earlier with the First Contact War. Was the humans found a Mass Effect relay and tried to start it up again, which is not advised because they don't know where it goes. So, like, they don't want people to just turn on Mass Effect relays because they're like, no, we don't know where this is going to lead. It might lead to just some other galaxy or another star system that we know about, or it might just fucking take you into the star, because there is one Mass Effect relay called the Omega 4 relay, which basically takes you into the center of the galaxy, which is, as if you don't know, is kind of a dangerous place. Like, even in reality, there's little known about the center of our own galaxy, because there is just a massive like star or black hole or what have you. We don't know too much about
Something's
it.
Making it spiral.
Something's making it exactly.
Yeah, so
something with a massive gravitational pull.
The center of the galaxy is so many stars clustered together that basically any semblance of star system gets lost, and there's just stars, and they're just exploding and black holing and supernovaing everywhere, and it's causing so much mass and pull that it's sucking everything into itself, and it's just like basically nothing can exist there.
Right, exactly. And the mass and the Omega 4 relay, which is found near Omega, where Arya T'Loak is, that basically takes you into the center. And that's where we find out that the Collectors have their base. So the Collectors we find out that the Collectors were actually previously Protheans, which kind of gets into a little bit of the plot. Because they were basically manipulated and transformed by the Reapers to become the Collectors, to basically do whatever they kind of want. However, when the Collectors aren't being manipulated by the Reapers, they are sort of kind of in their own right, like their own kind of mercenary group, because you can hire them. Like other mercenary groups can hire Collectors and do stuff. So they do kind of exist with their own agendas in mind, but there's not a lot of them.
It's harder to explain. Harder to explain without explaining Reapers first.
Yeah, that's a good point. So why don't we go into the Reapers? So we were talking about the Citadel, we were talking about the mass relays, and all of these things were created by the Reapers. What are the Reapers? Well, they're the big bads. They're the big bad guys. Sovereign, Harbinger, we are two known ones. Those ones actually have some names to them. They are the things that come every sort of, 50,000 years, basically. The big ones are basically 2 kilometers in length. Some of them aren't that big because they can be 160 meters. I mean, that's not that. That's huge still. 160 meters is massive. But they can also range to 2 kilometers. Imagine something that is 2 kilometers long coming to attack you. It's like a starship, basically. But they are sentient creatures. They are themselves sort of a hive mind of crazy highly advanced technological synthetic. So synthetic meaning they are both technology and organic material combined to create ultimate powers. They've existed for God knows how long. We actually learn about them in a DLC in Mass Effect 3. I won't get into that, though. I don't want to spoil that because that's one of the coolest fucking DLCs in the whole franchise. The Leviathan DLC. Highly recommend you do that if you play Mass Effect 3. But the Reapers are actually modeled off of the Leviathan. But they are kind of like these giant squid crab-like creatures. They kind of look like giant squids, kind of. Very intimidating looking.
They're kind of like hands, but they have like this kind of like squid back to them. They have big fingers.
You actually see Sovereign in the very first chapter of the first game. Like, although you just assume it's a starship that you've never seen before. You're like, wow, that's a crazy looking starship. Turns out it's actually a Reaper, which is one of the coolest reveals in Mass Effect 1. When you're like, that thing's a living creature. It's like, oh, fuck. And oftentimes Sovereign is the first one that shows up because Sovereign is trying to open up the door for the rest of the Reapers to show up. So what do the Reapers do? Well, every 50,000, 60,000 years, they find themselves in our galaxy to basically harvest all advanced species and their technology. So every race that we talked about so far, from the Hanar to the Asari to the human beings, will be harvested and transformed basically into more of them. Which is horrifying. So basically, and we see a little bit of this in Mass Effect 2, we see a little bit of the process because the collectors are kind of trying to make their own Reaper. I actually just beat Mass Effect 2 on Sunday. So if you were there, you saw what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and now I think it's a good point to bring up what exactly the collectors are, because you kind of mentioned it before, but the collectors are what's left of the Protheans, which are the previous galaxy-conquering race, empire, you could say. Yeah. And the Reapers, after the Protheans got wiped out, the Reapers kept some of the Protheans, rearrange their genome to make them more like themselves. I believe that's the intention, at least, because they operate like a hive mind.
That's the intention.
And they basically just live in the center of the galaxy. And the game mentions that people see them as mercenaries. And I remember looking that up at the time, and I don't think that's ever confirmed true. I think people just assume they are, because no one knows why they attack places. They just kind of show up and attack. And it's found out that it's because they're collecting all the species of the galaxy, which is why they're called the Collectors.
Right, and that's basically the idea, is that they kind of work as an information for the Reapers. So, the Collectors are basically the reason why the Reapers come, because the Collectors have collected every species at some point or another, and they sent all that information to the Reapers that just basically, by the way, the Reapers, when they're not attacking, they just float around in dark space. Yeah. So the space in between galaxies, they just float around
for
there.
For what, 500,000 years or something? Or 5 million years or something like that?
They only float around for it's they float around for 50,000, because the cycles are only a couple of tens of thousands.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Previous galactic power 50,000 years before, because the galaxies only existed for a couple, a billion years. But they've done this a lot. The reason why there are so many Reapers, which you find out in Mass Effect 3, there are so many Reapers, is because they've been doing this for millions of years. So, and every time they do, they probably create at least a couple dozen new Reapers every time they harvest. Because harvesting they don't just come, harvest over the span of a week and leave. Harvesting can take hundreds of years. Yeah. So the Reapers come and they just keep going until everybody from those previous species are wiped out. They do not leave any of the advanced species. They leave non-advanced species. Yes. For example, the Prothean, you meet a Prothean in Mass Effect 3, and they talk about your species early on. So they know about human beings, and they're just like, oh yeah, you guys were monkeys living in caves. Like, or the Asari, they're like, oh, you guys were like weird little lizard people. Like, you guys used to use your tentacles for like swimming and stuff, but now you just kind of use them as headpieces. Like, so like we were around 50,000 years ago when the Reapers attacked before, but we were so primitive that the Reapers just totally ignored us. Like, they're like, oh, they're not ready yet. We're not going to get them. We'll let them advance. We'll let them advance further. But that doesn't mean that there isn't previous technology.
The reasoning that is explained, but it's a huge spoiler to talk about that from Mass Effect 3.
Right.
Also, just to point out as a fun note, there is a good collector character who breaks the hive mind. It's only in multiplayer, but you can play as a character called the Awakened Collector, and there's a little tiny lore note about him that you can find in Mass Effect 3, which basically just like they remember being a Prothean. So they're not bad guys. They're not bad guys. They're just fully Reaper controlled.
Yeah. They're indoctrinated, which is like the Reapers. That's like what it's referred to because Reapers are so powerful that their influence literally feeds into your brain and will manifest into your brain.
Yeah,
like,
basically it's how they win.
Where, like, if you, the reason why they win is because what they do is Reapers oftentimes indoctrinate like major sections of the galaxy to then, like, so those people allow them in. They're like, oh, no, we want the Reapers to come. We want them to come.
Yeah, not only are they giant,
and that happens quite a bit.
Multi-kilometer long hand squid spaceships with lasers like far advanced any other weapon, but they're emitting mind control aura everywhere they go.
Yeah. So if you're even around, even a derelict one, if you find one that's dead, it's still emitting mind control. Like, they're so powerful that even a dead Reaper themselves can control your thoughts and your actions, which is horrifying. And so they kind of leave their Reaper technology laying around everywhere in the galaxy because they want people to subtly sort of, start to become controlled by them. And that happens quite a few times with quite a few different characters that you meet throughout the series, which is pretty big. It's a pretty big deal. And the Reapers not only... So... As we know, the Collectors were former Protheans. So, the Protheans were the race that existed, 50,000 years before we did. The Collectors were them. The Reapers do the same thing with modern species. So, for example, they turn humans into creatures called husks, which are basically zombies. They basically just kind of operate the same way as zombies do. They just run at you, swipe at you, kill you. But they do the same thing to other species as well. They control Asari and turn them into banshees. They take... Batarians and turn them into scions. They take Turians and turn them into something I forget. There's like a bunch of different ones.
The Batarians are the cannibals, aren't they?
Oh, you're right. Those are the cannibals, and maybe the scions are the
scions are Turians,
I think,
or Krogans.
Oh, or maybe they're fusion. They might be a fusion of both because that's kind of their thing too. Is they kind of
actually looks like to remember.
Yeah, because they do a lot of gross shit. We got to find out all the different types of Reaper fucking like
scions are humans.
Oh, scions are humans?
Yeah, scions
I thought they were
both humans.
Okay.
It's what it is. Scions it's 3 humans. Okay, so 3 humans is a scion.
Oh, okay. So they squish 3 humans together. Great, fantastic.
Yeah, the Turians are the big, bulky motherfuckers that are irritating as hell to fight in the game.
Oh, right. Okay. God damn it. All right, but yeah, so they do that with everybody.
They even have Rachni.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They have Rachni as well. Rachni, like, species that are prone to, like...
indoctrination.
Or who have, like... often are telepathic. Yeah, prone to, like... So, like, if you're a telepathic species, the indoctrination is a lot easier for them, because they're just like, oh, you already do this. Great. Like, you already speak with your minds. Great. We're just going to go right in. So, like, the Rachni are really easily manipulated. However, there's something you can do to change that within Mass Effect 1, actually.
Yeah, and the Geth, too.
Well...
it's more science way, but the Geth they can get, they just hack into them because the Reapers are machines.
Yep, they're part machine. So, and the way they basically do everything is they kind of just like take all the humans, melt them down into like a big old goo pile, and then along with technology form gigantic Reapers. Also, I love the picture that you brought up in the stream. If you're watching it, it just shows you the sheer scale of how big of a Reaper is. it just lands. What is that? Is that L.A. or something?
It looks like, I think it's the Golden Gate Bridge. Maybe it's hard to tell, but it's just
it's hard to tell.
It's just I think it's just a fan made image of a Reaper, but it's correct scale.
Yeah, it's just massive. And their guns are more advanced than ours. Their shields are more advanced than ours. Their armor plating is more advanced than ours. So throughout the game, you have to do a lot of very fast research on how to get prepared for them and try to take them down. But basically, no species that have ever come before were able to take down the Reapers. The Protheans, however, did the closest by simply putting like information that disconnected from their basically galactic internet. So, as you can imagine, most of these species have galactic internets, basically, how they work. And the Protheans, so 50,000 years ago, were no different. They had one. And what they ended up doing was they ended up hiding a lot of the information of what the Reapers are and what their intentions are and what they do within one on a planet called Ilos. This is a little bit spoilery, but it's Mass Effect 1. Come on. It's a little spoilery, but there's I forget what Vigil, I think, is the name of it, is the name of the AI.
Yeah,
and it basically is there it disconnected itself from the internet, and it buried itself deep within Ilos, just so that hopefully the next Citadel species could come across it and get a leg up on what the Reapers are, and that's one of the major reasons why our age of Citadel Council species and beyond were able to fight the Reapers, is because we had this excessive knowledge. And throughout the games, basically, you just spend your time trying to gather more information about what these Reapers are. And again, all they really are just massive harvesting machines. And they're so arrogant, though. They have such an ego on them. They every time you talk to one, it's just kind of like, your puny brain cannot comprehend what we do. Your stupid, tiny little baby insects. We are going to get you. And the entire time as Shepard, you're just like, shut the fuck up. But
it's the classic gods trying to talk to people, but they're like, you guys could never understand what we're doing. It's so above you.
Yeah, it's so above you, but it's really easy to understand.
Yes, actually. It is actually very clear what they're doing. You do find out everything going on with them by the end of Mass Effect 3. Which is one of the problems with Mass Effect 3 is it just kind of has this information overload dump literally in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. So, because you talk to Harbinger a lot.
Yeah, you talk to something
the first Reaper, by the
that's
way.
like, hey, here's everything about what we're doing, and you're like, well, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
They did a good job up until that point, honestly, because what I love about Mass Effect so much is again, in the very first act of in the very first scene in the first act of the first game, you see Sovereign, you see a Reaper. Yep. And by the end of the first game, you discover what the Reapers are gonna do. And it's basically the entire second game is basically just putting together an amazing team to figure out what's going on with a subplot. If you think about Mass Effect 2, it's almost just a subplot of the game. It's a very specific thing to collectors are taking human colonists. That's it turns out to be more attached to the whole thing.
Yeah, it turns out to be incredibly attached to the whole thing. Yeah. Which I think the Elusive Man, a character from Mass Effect 2, is aware of. But he knows what's going on. But it doesn't tell you, and you kind of find out more. Which also something we kind of
find out on your own.
We kind of we didn't talk a lot about. We talked about the Batarians in the Citadel. We didn't talk about Cerberus.
No, we did not talk about Cerberus. So Cerberus is a major faction, human faction to be very specific.
Yes, the best way to describe them is they're just a human terrorist organization.
Right. Yeah. They have done horrible, terrible things in the name of progressing humanity and human agenda.
Human first.
Yeah. Anyway, they're very much human first. However, they did bring Shepard back to life, so there's that.
Yeah, they did.
Shepard himself is or themselves are like, fuck you. But and they're run by a guy named the Elusive Man, who is basically the chief scumbag. The amount of times that fucking the elusive man just doesn't tell you stuff. Like, he only tells you like a quarter of the information you need to know in order to proceed is astounding. He's a huge dickhead.
He is the classic corporate villain character. And he's played by Martin Sheen. So if you like that, that's great.
Which is phenomenal.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's
a great character in terms of like, you know, him like being. He's a great villain. Like he sucks, but he's great. From a writing perspective, he's phenomenal. But from a perspective of, oh God, this guy is a scumbag. Because there's so many times in the second game where you come back to talk to him and you're like, why the fuck didn't you tell me this? And he goes, I didn't think you needed to know. And you're just kind of like, fuck you, dude. So there's a lot of that going on. You hear a little bit about Cerberus in Mass Effect 1. Like, you'll hear like news articles about them.
You can fight him in Mass Effect 1 too.
That's right. There's
a couple little side missions you can go to and do a couple things. You'll find like Cerberus bases on planets, and you're kind of like explore mode.
Right, yeah. I didn't do a lot of exploring in Mass Effect 1, to be honest, because it's
very boring.
Yes. Yeah. Like, Mass Effect 1's great for, like, learning about the universe, and then it's like Mass Effect 2 and 3 are just kind of like, all right, here you go. Like, here's the universe. But anyway, I don't really have much more planned to talk about, because I just wanted to kind of go over the major races, kind of like the powers, like biotics and stuff, and then also like
basically
what's going on with the Reapers.
A good summary is it's a great science fiction universe where there's a species called the Reapers coming, and you play a guy trying to stop it. And then in between Mass Effect 1 and 2, there's a side game called Mass Effect Andromeda, which was actually the last.
Is that in between 1 and 2?
Yeah, it's in between 1 and 2. At the point of doing this episode, of recording this in 2022, Andromeda is the most recent Mass Effect game. Mass Effect 4 is coming. It's announced. It's talked about. It's been a long time since Andromeda came out, to horrifyingly bad reviews. I played Andromeda myself. I don't think it's that bad now. It was then. If you go back and play it now, it's been polished up and fixed a lot.
Oh, that's good.
The gameplay is great. It's got great gameplay, just like Mass Effect 2 and 3. But it just doesn't have the world building, because since you're different. The point is called the Mass Effect Andromeda. The plot, I guess this is the Mass Effect episode. I'll say what the base plot is. There's a group called the Andromeda Initiative, I think that's what their name is, and they are a exploration organization to send people to Andromeda Galaxy, which, if you don't know, is our closest galaxy, to try to start a new life and explore and stuff. And you find out pretty quickly that the actual reason is because it was funded by a mysterious benefactor, maybe the elusive man, who wants to have everyone able to get away to start over life again in case the Reapers win. So they go to a place where the Reapers have no interest in, which is the Andromeda Galaxy.
Right.
So you go, because the Reapers
probably their own shenanigans.
There's a lot of weird stuff there. I really actually, you can tell a lot of people did care about building up the lore of the Andromeda Galaxy, because as you would expect, it has its own species, its own citadel, if you will, its own, not literally, but like its own society,
right? Its
own galactic society. And you kind of get interjected in this. None of your technology is compatible. You can't understand a fucking word they're saying. Like, there's no auto-translate. You know what I mean? Like, they did a very good job of that. Like, everything is so alien and different. Like, there's no human-y aspects of it, which is great. And I really appreciate the way they did it.
That is really cool. I have, because I don't know anything about it. I never played it just because, again, I heard so much bad stuff.
Yeah, most of the bad stuff, to be fair, was in the technical aspect. Graphical glitches, game crashing, like the game not having completed areas that were just like kind of like buggy and stuff like that. A lot of that has been fixed. So just anyone out there listening, if you want to experience more Mass Effect, Andromeda's on sale a lot. Whenever there's an EA sale, pick it up on Steam or something. It's worth playing through for cheap.
All right. Yeah, okay. I mean, maybe I finally will get around to it then. So I didn't know it took place in between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Do the people, like, learn what's going on?
So you wake up 500 years after. So they have no communication with the Mass Effect world. I think it's 587 years or something. Like that's how long you were in
Oh,
cryosleep. But you left in between 1 and 2.
okay.
So you're way, way, way in the future, but there's no one that came after you. You know what I mean? Like, there's no one had
Right.
invented ships to go faster, so you're just there. You have no way to call home. There's no way to communicate that far back to the Milky Way. So you're just
That's
like
pretty wild.
way out there. You're isolated. You have a couple like Liaras in it a little bit, like by like you get like read logs of messages sent to the Andromeda team, stuff like that. Like she was involved in helping out because she's a scientist. Other characters are
Right.
involved. Like there's a little bit of elusive man stuff going on. There's even like matriarch Benezia stuff, you know, like
Oh, really?
there's because
Oh,
it's all
okay.
these characters from like one. It's that era still. Like they leave, I think,
Right.
like 2 years or like not even 2 years like after Saren is defeated. So it's like they leave in that
Oh,
time
wow.
frame.
Yeah, because I was gonna say in between 1 and 2 technically is 2 years.
Yeah.
'Cause, like the Mass Effect 2 starts off like right after the Saren stuff.
Yeah.
But then you die.
I think
Shepard dies,
Shepard's
and then
still
it's just
alive initially as you leave. But just the way the Andromeda system works, or initiative worked, is each major species had an arc. So there was the human arc, the Asari arc, the Turian arc, the Solarian arc, the Quarian arc, and I think that's it. But other species were on them as well. Like there's Krogans on the human arc. There's Krogans on like the Turian arc. There's some Turians on the human arc, a little bits, but like the Drell are all on the Asari arc, I think. Like stuff like that. Like there's a bunch of them because the Drell are a big part of it because they want to repopulate their species. So they're like, let's
Right.
go find another arid planet that no one lives on that we can live in Andromeda system kind of thing. So it's kind of like that. There's a bunch of arcs, and the plot is no one can find all the other arcs and you land, so you have to get contact with all the other arcs kind of thing.
Right. Okay. That's kind of cool. I dig that. It is kind of sad that within the 500 years we didn't develop a way to get to the Andromeda Galaxy faster.
Yeah.
Alright.
So yeah, there's some cool little Mass Effecty stuff because again, you have to go through dark space through the Andromeda system. Something else likes to wait in dark space, so there's some things have been fucked with, like as you go through. There's a lot of cool little elements to the game. It's just the plot is good on its own, but it's so on its own. That's my problem with it. Like it's like I love Mass Effect because I like seeing these species and these planets. It's such the deep lore that they've built around it.
Yeah. Right. But that's about it. That's all I've got. And thanks for telling me a little bit about Andromeda because I
Yeah.
really did not know much.
I
so-
figured I'm not gonna ever do a Mass Effect Andromeda episode. So like let's just add
Right.
it in now while we're here.
Yeah. Little 5-10 minutes
Yeah.
synopsis. Yeah, why not? But yeah, they have a Mass Effect 4 coming out, which does take place in
Yes.
our universe, which is supposed
It
to
is a
happen
sequel
after
to 3. Yes.
which I am very excited for because I want to know what they're gonna do. 'Cause,
Yes.
like, how are you gonna top Reapers? You know, like,
I mean, here's my thing.
how do you top that?
Here's my hope. I hope they don't have some galaxy-ending threat. I hope there's just other shit
yeah.
going on that you have to deal with. Like, oh fuck, the Turians declared war on Earth after all this. Like that kind of thing. Like you have to do something. It's an
Right.
interesting thing because I don't want to spoil Mass Effect at all ending, but I will say it follows the red ending. Mass Effect 4. We know that
Right.
much.
Yeah.
Which means Mass Effect relays aren't really working. So it's a very
Yeah.
interesting state of the galaxy.
Right, because you can't just go from place to place anymore. Most of the relays didn't they explode?
Yeah. So can people fix them? Maybe. But like maybe not. Like if you fix one, the one on the other end also has to be fixed.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of hope that they, to be honest, push through that one quicker because like a lot of the point of Mass Effect is that you fly around the galaxy. So I really
Yes,
hope they
I
kinda
don't
go, like,
think they're going to do like,
yeah,
oh, well,
it
you're
take
all
long.
on this one system. No, I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah, that would be a little bit silly. So
I
hopefully
think-
they'll just be
yes.
like, oh, and they fixed them.
I think, or at least I
Fast
hope,
forward, like,
my message to those BioWare people, I hope you listen to what we think about Andromeda. So you know what we
I
want.
think they did.
Yeah, I think they did too.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, but thank you guys so much for enjoying yet one of my personal favorite video game
Me too.
franchises of all time. I fucking love this.
I always say
so
Mass,
much.
Mass
This is one of
Effect
my
2,
favorite franchises.
top 5 games of all time.
Oh, it's so good. It's fantastic. Mass Effect 2 and 3 are the only 2 games on the Xbox 360 that I got all the achievements for. Like, I perfected them just because I loved them so much. I was I was fine going back in there and playing them over again because I was like, yep, that's fine.
Yep.
I beat them on Insanity, which was genuinely one of the hardest things I did. I remember raging a lot.
Yeah. So just
now I think my brain is too slow and dumb. So
ending note, play the games yourself. You won't regret it.
yeah. Again, it's a very enriching character-based game. We if we spoiled anything, it was very minimal tonight. We barely spoiled anything. So trust me, you got a lot to learn about the universe because it's a character story, and that's what makes it so good. So, but yeah, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate you listening.
Everyone, thanks for stopping by and listening. This was Lords 30. We'll see you next time for episode 31. Have a good night, everybody.